Hello, good afternoon. Does a company push for open source with the same intensity in all directions? Or should certain types of applications be privileged candidates for open source? This is probably a question that is frequently being asked in many companies, and there is today no definite answer to this question. However, I want to share with you today 4 examples based upon my own experience in a telecommunications company, a telco. These are 4 examples where the company is not only using open source, but very significantly contributing back to the open source community. My name is Hervé Paco. Until a few months ago, I was in charge of open source governance and promotion in a telco. First example is ONAP. ONAP is about managing the core network. It is at the heart of the 5G. So it is quite natural to find telcos involved here with the objective to structure their ecosystem. This is merely the continuation of all work that has been done in normalization bodies such as ITU, International Telecommunications Union, 3GPP, GSMA, etc., etc. Only that now the project is being hosted by the Linux Foundation. What is worth being mentioned, though, is the role played by the telecommunications equipment manufacturers. Historically, telecommunications systems were not developed by the telcos themselves, but by the Alcatel, the Nokia, the Ericsson, or the Huawei. It seems that the virtualization is not really changing the paradigm. ONAP is not developing solutions, but only specification and semi-finished products that still have to be integrated into solutions. So it will be interesting to observe whether the telcos do develop themselves some of these solutions based upon the ONAP outputs, or whether they will still entirely rely on the traditional equipment manufacturers. Second example is about geographic information system. A geographic information system is very important for a lot of industries that go well beyond telecommunications, such as energy, transport, tourism, government, e-commerce, etc. The QGIS project was developed by Orange and presented here in this OW2 conference 1 year ago. It is an important project. The application is supporting all the building and maintenance of radio antennas, copper and fibers in Orange France. These physical pieces of equipment probably represent the most important share in the technical assets of the company. 20,000 Orange employees are using daily this application. Here, the objective of Orange was not to structure the ecosystem as it was with ONAP. It was merely to get a better control over the functions and, incidentally, lower the cost. So it was mainly opportunistic. The legacy proprietary geographic solution was not good. Orange had no visibility on the roadmap of the product, could not influence it, and the time to fix bugs was far too long. The release of the new solution, entirely based upon open source technologies, was met with much enthusiasm by the users. It is worth mentioning that Orange is not only consuming lines of code produced by others, but Orange also makes contributions back to the QGIS open source community in order to avoid creating technical debt. So there is clearly an engagement by Orange. Third example is about the business support system, the BSS. In a telecommunications company, this includes the CRM, the billing, the provisioning of services, etc. One of the big challenges of the telcos is the complexity of their IT. Historically, fixed communications and mobile communications have often been developed in different business units, supported by different information systems. Likewise, the online marketing of telecommunication services could have been developed with its own information system, different from the information system supporting physical sales outlets. Often also, telcos have been developed through acquisitions. So, in order to ensure true multi-channel and multi-service, the information system architecture of the telcos must be simplified. The reference framework for this new architecture has been published by the TM Forum and is called ODA, Open Digital Architecture Framework. ODA divides the traditional BSS into three blocks called Party, Core Commerce, and Engagement. These three blocks should be neatly separated and interrelated with standardized APIs. This is the condition to ensure multi-service and multi-channel. The TM Forum launched the open source development of the ODA component Accelerator as a proof of concept for this new architecture. In this case, like in ONAP, the goal of the telcos who participate to the project is not to develop their own information system, but to structure the ecosystem. The telcos want to put pressure on the traditional software publishers, the Salesforce, Velocity, Amdocs, Microsoft, so that these software publishers do implement the standardized TMF APIs in their solutions. Fourth example is about software asset management. Traditionally, the pricing model of a software publisher is based upon the number of servers upon which their application has been deployed. With virtualization comes a problem, since an application could be running on any of the many servers of the cloud. The natural tendency of the software publishers is to stick to legacy pricing schemes, which would automatically result in a very significant increase of the total amount of the invoice. Optisam's objective is to provide a tool that makes it possible to implement an alternative, more reasonable pricing scheme based upon usage metrics that will be recognized as valid both by users and by software publishers. Optisam has been developed by Orange and is being published as open source. So in this example of Optisam, like in the ONAP and the ODA example, the goal is strategic. It is to structure an ecosystem. Let us sum up now. In a company, the goal, the engagement in favor of open source could vary from one project to the other. In some projects, the company may contribute back to the community. In other projects, the company may merely consume lines of code produced by others. In some projects, like QGIS, the goal is purely opportunistic. But in other projects, like the three projects we mentioned, the goal could be strategic. What seems important to me is that two of these strategic projects, the business support system and the software asset management projects were indeed initiated by telecommunications company. But the open source technologies that have been developed could be of interest for many companies well beyond the telecommunications industry. Thank you very much for your attention and talk to you on the chat.